for any people listening to this, you may not yet be a parent, or you may be a parent. Mental health is something that you should be supporting those loved ones around you. It's not something that they should be hiding away from you and trying to, present something they are not.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. After a what a day of a session trying to put together a beautiful conversation with a community hero. We thought it's best to join it, to do it this late evening. You'll excuse us with the light. Like we said, the conversation needs to keep going despite the challenges of ESCOM and load shedding. Please do forgive us if we got the bad lighting or the sound. But I'm thinking the sound will be good, just the lighting, because we're doing a special podcast session this evening. It is with my dear brother from the Western Cape, Ahmad Solomon, a community hero in the Western Cape, someone who's truly dedicated, a selfless leader, someone who's about the people and making a difference. Please help me welcome the one and only Ahmad Solomon. How you doing, brother? Welcome back. Welcome back again.
I'm good, thank you, Freeman. I get a bit shy and almost want to run away when you introduce me in that way. I don't do well with that much praise, but thank you very much nonetheless. I'm happy to be in your company. You're doing some amazing work yourself, and just thank you very much for affording us this opportunity to have this conversation.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jumping right into it, when I came in contact with you about a few years ago when we were doing a program to help young people to get through overseas, you came across as someone who really touched me, someone with a high moral fiber, someone who's given himself for to other people. And I wanted to truly understand who is Ahmad Salman and where did he grow up and what keeps him going and why does he do what he do?
Thank you. So Freeman, I've to answer that question, I think I need to acknowledge my parents. My mom is late. She passed on in 2019. But she really understood what I was doing, and that made her proud because she herself was involved in the community, and she herself did pioneering work very early on when it came to early childhood development. She herself went to the United States of America to go and see what they're doing, really just to come back home and just use the latest technology and the latest skills to be able to upskill, young people. And so her life was really about serving the community. And my dad too, growing up, we'd always be involved in many things. I'd see my dad at mosque meetings, part of committees, coming home from work, having supper quickly and going off to a meeting. So I was always aware of that other part of life and not just, a career that you're working for. I think our lights just went back on now as well. But
I
so
see
that's what
that. I
I,
see that.
so that's sort of what I was, but I'll keep this going because the light is just a little bit better. And so that's
Yeah.
what I was exposed to. And so it was something normal. When I heard stories of my grandparents, they too, gave back to the community. They too were beacons of hope to many people. And so I think it's something that I always saw. And then also I need to acknowledge my uncle who was part of the struggle. And I remember him partaking in rallies and talks and part of various political organizations and really just giving of himself to try and fight for something that benefited everyone. I remember when he went into exile, I was trying to understand that, and for me, it didn't make sense that someone would disrupt his entire life, have some of his children in South Africa, and him being in another country, only so that he's able to speak the truth. And so that was profound in terms of me just struggling to understand that. And I think also, even further away with Nelson Mandela And I think that we're in this season now where everyone is speaking about 67 minutes. And you know what, again, you ask yourself, how can someone be in prison and say that I'd rather stay in prison than negotiate on people's rights? And so those are the personalities that I really often think about, and just think about what did they sacrifice, just to sort of work towards what we are able to enjoy right now. So that's sort of where it comes from. And I think that later on,
Nice, man.
yeah, it's just so that's sort of where it comes from. And then I think, when I left school, I matriculated, I went on to the University of Cape Town. And again, I was just very aware that, we've come out of a political struggle. And I could see that, there was still this huge disparity, and it just didn't feel right. And I think that informed me to ask quite a lot of questions. I met quite a lot of people, and it's really my interest to understand something else about people, who makes us who we are. And I think that's what really just led to a curiosity being born, where I asked certain questions that I thought sometimes, I'm probably the only one asking these questions, but I was always just interested in the people, in the person, and the journey and the history of the people. So I think that's really, in short, sort of the history and the story of Ahmad.
Amazing. So basically, in trying to get your story, you basically come from people who just care more about the others, people who are not, who wouldn't sit, who their conscience wouldn't sit with the situation that is unfair, situation that is seems to be having an injustice. It's wow. When I was discussing with my mother, when I was discussing with my mother a lot about purpose, she said that when you find people like that, you basically, it means you basically find angels. You basically find people who have God inside them, and then those are the people that within them there is a situation, there is a built-in God that wouldn't allow any evil to exist. My dear brother, it becomes more of a privilege that then I have become to be in contact with you, and we have managed to share a bit of work, and then I've managed to get to see you do more of the work that you do. Jumping right through the work that you do, I know you do it via through the scouts, and then others as well. You definitely just do it because that's the nature of the human being that you are. When did you join the Scouts movement? And then, if you can tell us a little bit about the Scouts movement, why does it exist? And then, what does it actually aim to achieve?
Thank you, Freeman. Freeman, it's funny that you ask that, because again, I need to bring my parents into this. And so back in 1987, my dad was amongst a few people who heard about Scouts, and they felt the need that, we need to have this in our community so that we can develop young people. And he became part of this committee that started the group First Wetland. And so I saw him being part of this committee and enabling young people. At that time, I was probably about 7 or 8, and so he was an enabler. And it didn't just stop there. It was the entire extended family who rallied up the support when there was a fundraiser, when there was an event. They came out in support of this, and it's because they knew that it were things like this that really just molded young people and shaped the community. And so that's sort of how my introduction with Scouts started. And I think later on, when I then had children, I reminisced about what were the lessons and really the value system around Scouts. And so naturally, me pushing my kids into Scouts was a no-brainer. And Scouts then saw an over enthusiastic parent, and they roped me in, and I became involved. And that's sort of where I got reintroduced to scouting. But funny enough, at the same time, Freeman, I also became involved in the school governing body at my kids' school. And what this meant was that, you had a say in terms of what do we need to do to make the school operate better. And I always reminded myself the seriousness of my role in leading the school governing body. And that was representing more than 700 young people. And that's a huge responsibility because imagine one of those 700 people could have the cure to AIDS, the cure to cancer, the next Nelson Mandela. And for that reason, I needed to be 100% my best. And so in that journey, we introduced scouting at that school. And you know, a lot of our schools don't have the facilities, don't have sport, and so on. And so scouting was really welcomed at the school. And that's where it further, my scouting journey went into another direction. And when this began, scouts came to me and said, you know, there's this project that we need to get underway. Would you be able to start this up? And so in 2016, scouting in school started. And the one thing that I will say is that throughout this journey, starting something from scratch, there were quite a few things that just kept me going. And the one quote is from Arthur Asher, where he says, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And that's really what kept me going, you know. It's not a matter of, you know, what don't we have to continue, but it's what do we have? What can we do? Where can we start? And you know, when you're doing this type of work, you're always looking for inspiration and you draw inspiration. And not only do you see that in acknowledgement with the young people, but also, you know, you draw. There's another quote, for example, from George Bernard Shaw, where he says that some people see things as they are and say, why? I dream of things that never were and say, why not? And so it's things like this that kept me going throughout this time. And so 6 years later, scouting in schools, it's found a place and it's enabled so many young people. And that's how we met. So yeah, that's sort of my involvement with Scouts. And I serve in various roles, you know, within Scouts, and it's just absolutely wonderful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you can continue from where you said Bennett Shaw.
Okay, yes. And so it's quotes like that one from Bernard Shaw, George Bernard Shaw, where he says, some people
Right.
see things as they are and say why. I see things that never were and say why not. And so it's this type of thinking and approach to life that just gets you going and motivates you to do the impossible. And really, you know, that led me to where we had met, and we had met, that was late in 2018, I believe. And yeah, I'll hand over to you, and you can speak a bit about how we had met.
Wow, wow, wow. So it happened that through the Department of Tourism and through a gentleman, a legend, an incredible entrepreneur, Glenn Davidson, we got to an opportunity to come together at Scouts, and we were looking for as many as young people, of about 1,000 young people that they come from disadvantaged students, and we wanted to go in to those communities and find them. And by God's grace, we managed to find Scouts because coming from the director's experience, he went through a Scout. He's a Scout member as well. And then that's when that we managed to find the Scouts in Western Cape. And then you guys managed to link us with the rest of the Scouts, young kids from disadvantaged communities like Umlazi, from Google to Khalid and stuff like that, and we managed to put together those kids. And to this day, I even wrote a book. A journey back to self is one of my a memo that I wrote about key elements, key parts of my life that have kind of like stayed with me, and they are the highlight of my life. That in the book I write that I am truly the luckiest to have been involved in those projects, to have managed to go down into those townships, into those areas, to select those young kids to go overseas. These are students, these are young people who have never got an opportunity, who have never even got an opportunity to go overseas and get on a plane and spend some 3 months there, like engaging in different environments, different diverse cultures as well. So, and by your incredible help, we have managed to send as many. I can't remember the number, but I know it was way over 100 as well. And it has been something that stays with me, and I smile that if there's one thing that I did that truly makes me smile in front of God's face, it would have been just giving young people from different corners that are very disadvantaged an opportunity to get on the plane. I remember my experience when I get on a plane, coming from a village, coming from growing up in the village. I knew that when I got into that plane, that I knew that I had to give someone else a chance to. You know what I mean? This work is no longer about us. You know, we have given an opportunity with the light to shine it to others as well. And that's why I was so passionate to work together with you guys to make sure that the rest of that work continues. Now, with the next question that I have to ask is that I don't have to mention any key articles or topics that are happening in the country. You know all about it. Our country is faced with dire situations of many negative situations happening in the country. Now, I wanted to understand that my understanding is that if we are able to win that whole challenges of negativity of young people drowning themselves into like alcohol, drugs, and all those sorts of stuff, my key knowledge is that the center of it all, in order to win, is our communities. It has to first start in our communities. Now, with your experience and knowledge, how do you think we can win the war against drugs, alcohol, and teenage pregnancy, and build a social cohesion where each and every one, the young and old, there's a relationship. The young person, the old person can encourage the young person to do better, and then the young person can also see, can look up to the older person so that they can be able to build a better community. Coming from your experience in starting to replicate your country.
You know, Freeman, what I see often is there's an absence of values and morals, or not an absence, but there's been a reinterpretation of what values and morals are. And we need to look at what are the young people accepting as values and morals. And in my opinion, values and morals are being taught by who our role models are. And when we live in this global village, our role models become celebrities. Our role models become all of these people. And so the message that I'd like to say is that if you are a celebrity, if you have a huge following on social media, it is your absolute responsibility to be an example to those who are following you. You know, we don't need people who are chasing name brands and fashion and all of this, and then they'll do anything to get there. We need people who will encourage education. You know, in a country where very few reach matric, we need to understand the role that that plays in our economy, in terms of employment. And so we need to look at who are our role models. And the one thing that I've arrived at is I've said that when we change the role models, we change society. And so the question is, who are the role models and how are we developing them? And I go further and I say that, you know, if we look at these role models, we need to change the conversation because that's the only way we're going to change the role models. And so that's why the work that you do in Freeman, you know, you provide platforms for people who are doing this work, to be able to use these platforms. And I am going to say that, you know, I do believe that there's nothing great about us doing the work, you know, but I think there is humility in us being chosen to do the work, because I do think that, you know, in order to remain successful, one has got to sort of be extremely humble in being chosen for this. So it's really about morals, it's about values, it's about when someone chooses you as a role model, you need to absolutely be your best. You know, it's my responsibility that when a young person sees me, what I'm doing, you know, what I'm encouraging that they do, and that's how I feel that really we're going to change, you know, society. Especially the politicians, you know, what type of lifestyles are they leading, and how are we encouraging this? So in short, a very long answer to a very important question. I'm going to say that, you know, we need to produce quality role models, values and models, and that's really how we're going to change the fabric of society.
Correct. Correct, correct. Wow, you just touched on something very, very, very important right there. When you mention that the role models, the people that the young people that people look up to, the ones that have huge following on social media, those are the ones that have duty. They, instead of showing a negative image, they show a positive image. And another point that you also mentioned that I find very important is the leadership in the country. I find that people that how can we win the situation where they don't only not look at the national leadership, they look at the local leadership, because the national leadership, it's quite a challenge to regulate that one, right? Because like it seems like the corruption and other stuff is just like the game of the lifestyle of the game, and that's where everybody just do their own thing, and it's sad because there are young people watching. But what I love the most is that it's is the call that each and everyone can respond to the call, where they need to step forward, to be chosen, and realize that they can be chosen to do better, and have every young person growing around them looking up to them. And I'm quite humbled by your words. And I say that because I do what I do today because it took a village for me to be raised. I grew up in Limpopo, in a small village. There's about maybe about less than 5,000 population in the whole village. So basically, everybody know everyone, and young and old. They had to be. There's always a relationship. And then when COVID hit, I decided to go back to that village and say that I want to go back to that village that raised me. And after I've seen the world, after I've been in every city in the country, and parts of the overseas, I wanted to give back to that village. And today, I do some incredible work with like retail space and agriculture work as well, trying to create employment for the young people as well. So it's definitely something that I think that every person who has got an opportunity to be raised by good role models also needs to step up and do it for the others. And that's why we find people like us in this space today. And I say to you that, brother, may you never ever lose hope. I know it gets difficult. I know the situation in the Western Cape with the guns and the drugs. It's everywhere, right? But knowing that there's people like you out there gives me hope that someday, even if it's the few, that they will get out of the situation, realize that there's a bigger world out there than the one that they occupy. You know what I mean? With my last question is that, Brother Ahmed, we regard you as more than a community hero, but a national hero. That if we could be able to replicate your kind within the country, then there will truly be a better society, a better South Africa that I believe in, a better rainbow nation that I love and I believe in. And then my last question that I bring to you is that, what are your hopes and dreams for South Africa, for the African continent, especially looking at where it is right now? What are your hopes and dreams, and how can we do better to achieve that?
I'm I'm going to say again, I'm humbled when you place this huge title upon my head that, if we're able to replicate people like myself. And I think in that moment I must just acknowledge, God Almighty, that, we remain focused and we remain sort of close to the ground as possible. But to answer your question, I
Yeah.
think that education is probably central to this. Um, I think the statistics in the country when it comes to education, the amount of young people who never reach matric is alarming and staggering. And there's quite a lot of research being done in terms of the support that we need to give to young people within the education system. And there are many NGOs who are doing research in this. I think the next thing that I would say is that we need to relook at the health system. And what I mean is that not only is it the Department of Health on a national level and a regional level, but I think also within our communities, how are we supporting various conversations around health? When we speak about health, we speak about HIV and AIDS, we speak about You know, how do we have the conversation about sex, and how young people choose to have sex? We speak about you know, the issue of mental health, and I think especially now with COVID-19, mental health has become something that we speak about more often. However, having said that, I think that within our communities, and especially our under-resourced, poorer communities, we don't speak about it enough. And I think that, you know, we need to speak about removing the stigma attached to mental health. We speak about all the other chronic illnesses, like high blood and diabetes, but we don't speak about mental health. And it's important that we do this. Mental health is very important, and it's okay if somebody is struggling with mental health. You know, it's our responsibility to support each other in going through this. And I think that probably the main people responsible for handling those conversations are parents. And so, for any people listening to this, you may not yet be a parent, or you may be a parent. Mental health is something that you should be supporting those loved ones around you. It's not something that they should be hiding away from you and trying to, you know, present something they are not. So health is the next one. The other thing is that I'd say is, you know, no matter whether you are employed or unemployed, whether you are studying or not studying, whether you are rich or poor, I would say find purpose, you know, because when you find purpose, then you find your place in society. And if we look back and we look at so many heroes, the reason why they are heroes is because they found purpose in society. And I do believe that everyone can find purpose. The other thing that I do want to say, Freeman, is that, you know, when we do the work that we do, um, who we are is not important. Absolutely not. You know, you don't know the name of your postman. You know, you don't know how many children your postman have. You don't know anything about your postman, but the postman ensures that you receive the message, you receive the letter. If you look at the doorman opens the door. You don't know his name, you know nothing of him, but he opens the door and you enter. And I think that is probably, I'd say, the most important thing in doing the work that we do. And so, you know, it's not about Ahmad Solomon and who he is and anything like that, but it's really about what ability do I have to be able to bring about change. And I'm going to say that, you know, a journey like this has not come just by myself, but I've made many acquaintances. I've met many people. And I will say this thing, I've taken advantage of those relationships, because when I met you, I knew that you were an opportunity to get a young person to America. And so I'm going to use that opportunity to its fullest. You know, and I don't know if you recall, I almost bullied you into doing a presentation that same week. And that's really
I
what we need to
remember
do.
that.
That's what we need to do. You know, I need to show up because I represent those young people. And so it's not about me, but it's about what am I prepared to do to get that opportunity into that young person's lap. And I'll take it even further. I'll say that, you know, if I think about that American experience for these young people, there was one particular young lady who boarded the plane. She went into, you know, she boarded, and I was on my way back to my car. I had dropped at the airport, and she sent me a message and she said, Ahmad, where is my bag? And I said, don't worry, your bag is on the plane and you're going to get your bag in Joburg. And it's those experiences that, you know, we've got to help our young people through those first time experiences. You know, it's the first person in
Yes.
the family going overseas. And these are the roles we need to take. So, you know, Freeman, I'm sure we could carry on and carry on, but that's really what I want to
We
leave
can
with.
carry on. Yeah,
You know, so
man, you
yeah.
summed it. You summed it up so philosophically, so powerfully. Find purpose. Um, the reason why you do it's not about you. Those are my takeout moments. That it's not about you. You know what I mean? You might the postman make sure that the job gets done, but it doesn't have to be about him. It doesn't put a name out there and say, "Oh, look at me." It's about the work. finding, like, understanding that assignment is very important. And I wish everybody will tune in and listen to this conversation. And that's why we do what we do, to kind of like put together well knowledgeable products and educational program like this, to make sure that they go out there and somebody just listens and gets to change their life. Brother Ahmed Solomon, you are a progressive African. May you continue doing what you do. I'm truly inspired myself, being a progressive African myself, and truly trying to put together this conversation. I am myself inspired, and you just reminded me of why I do what I do. It gets tougher during the course, but God is gonna see through that we achieve what it needs to be achieved, and the next person will follow it. And until the end, God's will be done. Thank you so much, man.
It's a
And
pleasure. If
may
I
peace,
can,
may the greater peace be with you.
thank you. If you will allow me just to have one more, and I think I'm going to again just take the opportunity and push this in there.
Yeah, I think we have. I think we have.
And we'll finish in that time. Yes. So the one thing, for example, is that when we look at education, we need to educate ourselves in order to do this work. And one important thing is that when we do this work, it's not about doing something to a young person, but rather doing it with a young person. And so it's about learning, it's about understanding, and then doing to the young people. I hope that we were able. Okay, so I'll just finish off very quickly over there, and then we'll finish off. So we need to educate ourselves about what's happening out there, what's happening on the ground, because we cannot respond if we don't know what the climate is. And so that's really the one thing that I want to say. The other thing is that along this journey, we need to
I
be
think
aware
I'm
that
losing you again.
Okay, so you can just stop me and we can carry on. So the one thing is,
No, I hear you. I hear you now. I hear you now. You can continue. Finish that part.
perfect. So it's about educating ourselves so that I'm not just doing things without understanding who the client is. I need to understand what are the needs of the young people rather than for me to assume what the needs are and do something that they don't need. A journey in supporting and assisting young people, it's not doing things to them, but rather doing things with them. Because when you take them along this journey with you, then they grow and they develop and you learn from them. And that's really just the way in which we as practitioners, as champions, as youth changers and agents just go about in doing our work. So Freeman, thank you. Thank you for creating this platform. Thank you for inviting me to have this conversation. Thank you so much and keep on doing the great and amazing work that you do.
You're an, you're an inspiration, sir. Thank you so much. Despite the challenge that we had today, thank you so much for striving through to make sure that the conversation happens. We're doing it in the evening with the light on. It might not be good, but what's important is the message that we're putting out there. May we never lose hope, and may we keep on just being the best that we can in front of God's eyes and making sure that the others gets to see that and continue that. Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Freeman. All the best.
Thank you.